if I step in your kitchen and it looks dirty, like I'm not eating anything from it. Not even a sealed bag of chips, I'm good. So I look at these factory farms with the same scrutiny because that's where the meat is held that's supposed to go in my body. And the more videos I saw on modern farming practices, there's no way I'm eating that. There's no way I'm ever gonna give that to my child. Like, you have dead and diseased animals mixed in with the live ones, standing in their own poop for weeks. Nothing about that registers as clean to me. And then I was reading Tracy's book, By Any Greens Necessary, and apparently they allow a certain percentage of feces in the meat. So I'm good.
When cows are going through that slaughterhouse process and they're sliced, they're hung up on metal hooks, and their stomachs are sliced open, everything falls out onto the equipment.
The way animals are murdered, the way they are gathered, the way they are farmed, the diseases they carry, that right there should be enough not to eat it. If I took you to this place downtown, Los Angeles, this chicken warehouse, whatever they want to call it, and at a certain time of day when they're murdering all the chickens, you can smell the death. And there's people lined up to get these chickens because they felt, well, they killed them fresh. And I sat there and I couldn't believe the smell. If you were to smell where they were, you wouldn't want to eat.
A lot of people say, well, I don't eat chicken anymore, I don't eat beef, so I eat fish. And they can't seem to let go of the fish. Fish is the holdout, that's the thing. There must be some meat on their plate and it's gonna be a fish. Fish is contaminated with mercury and with arsenics and with other industrial pollutants. And it gets in the flesh of the fish and you cannot cook it out. There are also a lot of parasites in the water that get into the fish's digestive tract.
Let me tell you, I went fishing maybe 3-4 years ago. I don't want to totally gross you out, but I have this very graphic image in my head where I'm like, it made it hard for me to ever eat fish because I got it out the water and all of these worms came out of it. I'm not joking. And they had someone on deck that, like, you know, cut the fish for you, prepared it, and they were like, oh, it's normal. This may have been the way it's always been, right? But this is not the way it's going to be moving forward.
So people turn their noses up at a diet that consists of fresh fruits and vegetables, but parasite-infested, disease, rotting meat with 2% crap in it is okay.
So we'll go ahead and head in here if you want to follow me. And I'll let you know who likes their space, who's friendly. Some of the goats and sheep here are really shy and kind of don't want as much attention, so you want to make sure we keep them comfortable. She goes over to every person and demands pet.
Is it 2 teeth? I think so. Okay.
Say your pet.
I just... Okay. I just want to make sure we cool.
It's estimated about 260 million male chicks are killed every single year in the U.S. upon their birth. And this is done with really cruel methods, such as being electrocuted on an electrified kill plate, being gassed, or simply just being thrown into a trash can to suffocate.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Genesis, and I am 8 years old. I am vegan and an activist because I don't believe animals should be put in slaughterhouses and circuses. People don't have to eat animals to live. All my favorite foods like pizza and mac and cheese I can still eat, in a vegan version. I became an activist to protest for what's right, to show kids they have a voice. I help people who are blinded. They don't know what's happening to the animals. I'm here for a purpose. My purpose is to get the whole world to go vegan. Thank you for helping me. Peace.
She wasn't even 4 years old. She always had chicken nuggets. That was her favorite meal at the time. She said, hey, Mom, where do we get our food from? And I told her we kill animals for the food that she was eating, and she was devastated. And I didn't even know she knew what death meant at that age. And she said, well, we have to kill, what is it? I said, well, chickens and cows. And she said, you know what, I don't ever want to eat this again.
My 6-year-old brother, I told him one day when we were driving, there was a squirrel and it was ran over. And he said, look, it's a dead squirrel. I'm like, yeah, that's the same as your meat and stuff. And he said, no, it's not. I said, yeah, because they kill animals for it. And how do you like that? He said, I don't like that. So then he went vegetarian. And then I convinced him to go vegan just from him saying, you know, the milk that you're drinking comes from a mama cow's boob. And I was like, do you like to drink out of mama cow's boob? And he said, I don't want to drink out of no one's boob. So I was like, yeah, go vegan.
Up until a few years ago, I really didn't care about animal rights. I'm not proud of that at all, but it's the truth. I remember when I was working at a talent agency years ago, and one of the actresses came in telling me about how she rescued this baby squirrel, and she took said squirrel to a rescue shelter in Malibu where he had a cliffside view of the ocean, organic acorns, and whatever the hell else. And I remember I was just so annoyed because I was like, you know what, somewhere there's a squirrel that's living the life better than me. And my irritation at that moment kind of summed up how I felt about animal rights. Like, this is a privileged issue.
Unfortunately, in some ways that it is, because we do afford the ability to be worried about another species, to be worried about what's happening to animals when many people are just striving for survival.
If you are living in an inner city where you're dodging bullets just to get home, or you are struggling just to put food on the table from day to day, those are your primary concerns. And you have less time, less energy, less mental space to devote to seemingly as esoteric as animal rights.
I think people who are doing vegan outreach or trying to campaign for veganism, they have to be aware of that. And that when you just approach someone and say that you should focus only on saving animals, it makes invisible the material struggles that most of the people in the United States, if not the world, have in just trying to survive as humans themselves.
I acknowledge that we as a movement need to be better about that. I don't think it means us going into communities of color and saying this is what you should and shouldn't do. It doesn't mean comparing slavery to animals and things like that, which I find offensive. I think it's more looking at these structures that have been in place that exploit and kill living beings.
We've been robbed collectively of our empathy. I want Black people to have that empathy back.
Maybe I'll try to take out meat from my diet once a week, or maybe I'll stop using makeup that is tested on animals. To start where you're at and not make it about, you know, just doing this overnight thing.
What are y'all gonna have for lunch?
First things first.
No, actually, I was thinking about a kale shake already. Nice. I love kale.
Monday, I might not have any meat. I might do a little meatless Monday.
Back when humans were hunters and gatherers, violence against animals, it was somewhat justified. You know, they didn't have the wide variety of alternatives we have today. But now, you know, all the sadistic, inhumane animal practices they got going on, they're not only barbaric, but it's completely unnecessary. And coming from a spiritual place, in my opinion, I think the whole thing has just become really ungodly.
They get the pigs and stuff and they keep them in cages, and then they can barely even move, and they take them and they kill them for the food. But we don't have to eat animals.
I think it's important that you become inspired by things that make you feel good. And it makes me feel good to know that 7,500 land animals didn't have to die because of me per year.
We're handed this narrative that we can only care about one thing at a time, and that if you care about other species communities, then that somehow mitigates your commitment to Black liberation. And that's a lie. That's a lie that white supremacy has given us. We can care about more than one thing, and indeed we're compelled to care about more than one thing, because our liberation is linked. Animal liberation and Black liberation and queer liberation are all connected to one another.
I eventually want to get to a place where abuse is not something so embedded in my lifestyle. I'm challenging people of color. Like, I'm calling my people to task. The same way we want people to take arms for our cause. The same way we want people to be compassionate for us. You know, I put the ball in your court. Like, if you see this cruelty, if it doesn't bother you, okay, sit tight. But if you know in your heart that what happens in these tapes is wrong, be strong and be disciplined enough to eat that conviction. for me, I grew up in DC and I had certain examples, you know. I had the strong black woman, the independent black woman. I didn't have the compassionate black woman. So that's why there's like a break in my empathy. But to hear a woman like you're setting an example, like you're an example that a lot of people don't have.
Thank you. Who, with a heart, can watch when a cow cries when its calf is taken away from it. I mean, how can somebody then just be so bold to say, but I have to have this to live, when you don't? What right do I have to take another sentient being's life when I don't need it to survive? And what right would I have anyway, is what really motivates me.
When I first embarked on my own vegan journey, I felt very alone. I felt disconnected from the mainstream vegan community. And I didn't see myself represented. And that's a common theme that I've heard other people saying, people of color, every time I've had conversations with them about veganism. It's immediately off-putting to them because the way that veganism is offered to us, it seems like this almost elitist thing that is only available for certain segments of the population.
I worry sometimes about being used as a token instead of recognizing that we have every right to be there. We have just as much knowledge and experience to be talking on these issues, and you don't need to just bring me out when the chateada, which is the Mexican rodeo, comes to town. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me, mostly young women of color, who say, do you know how good it feels to have someone who looks like me up there? The need is out there, but we have a movement that seems to be very focused on not us.
And if you don't want to do it for the animals, do it for people, do it for our community. Animal rights and human rights intersect. You know, we live in an ecosystem. Where do you think they put in these factory farms?
When you look at factory farming and animals raised for food, you also see this taking place, where you have high concentrated amounts of manure of animals, and where these animals are being raised are in communities of color. So in North Carolina, you have predominantly black communities living around pig farms where they are suffering from nosebleeds and headaches and nausea. They can't open their windows because the flies and the stench. Their property values go down because who wants to live near a pig farm? So that's why by stopping eating animal products, by not drinking that milk, by not eating any animal products, you are not participating in a system that also causes harm to communities living in these areas, which are predominantly communities of color.
And that's just scaling it down to a smaller problem specific to our communities. This is a worldwide problem.
Raising animals for human consumption consumes enormous amounts of resources. One of the reasons that global hunger is such a problem is because we grow enough food to feed every human being on this planet several times over. But the reason there's a shortage of food is because we take that food and instead of eating it directly, we turn around and feed it to animals. And that, in essence, creates scarcity. Because roughly estimated, it takes about 13 pounds of feed to put 1 pound of tissue on a cow. The largest source of greenhouse gas emissions is animal-based agribusiness.
Factory farming, the poop and the burps from animals that are factory farmed, they create more global warming emissions than all of the world's transportation combined. And that is the world over. That's just not in the United States. It's the world over. It's the rainforests that are being demolished so that cattle can graze to produce meat. It's the water that's being polluted. It's the soil that's being eroded. So factory farming for meat and dairy-based diets are the biggest contributor to global warming.
The real elephant in the room is that a lot of people of color don't really give a bleep about the environment. Even me personally, growing up, like I watched Captain Planet, I never litter. I did Earth Day once or twice in school, but that's like as deep as it got. The examples for that kind of thinking just weren't there in my community.
I believe that when we get people to critically think about their world, their behaviors will change as well. Talking about veganism or dietary veganism isn't the only way to get people to not eat meat. The reality is we all need to be thinking about this stuff because we all live on planet Earth.